Balake. Where is Balake at?
My name's Blake.
Do you want to go to war, Balake? I'm for real. Aaron.
Aaron is here, everyone, with Sterling Tompkins.
Hey, happy Sunday.
Happy Sunday. For anyone just joining us who's not familiar with Sterling, you can find Sterling's and his channel over at Sterling Tompkins on YouTube, at Leaving Scientology, Loving Life. We got a great topic to discuss today because you got a fantastic email in response to, was it a video we did together or was it just a video that you did on your own?
I think I did that one about forgiveness where I mentioned Shelley Miscavige, and I'm going to guess it came from that because the opening was about, I liked your video about Shelly. And so I think it came from that particular subject. Yeah, that one video.
So you got an email from someone who is known to you, but in the email, okay, you think it's known to you. The person emailed you anonymously, but said, I know you, I know your family, I've known you for, and he gave some details. Has this person admitted to you who they are, or are you just nearly 100% certain that you know who it is?
I'm making a good guess at who it is, but I can never be 100% sure. They knew some details about me that would be hard for anyone to know, specifically about call signs, radio call signs when I was at the church. So, I just have a guess of it, but also like you, when I read the emails, like, first of all, very well written. And absolutely, we've had that discussion about, can you fake if you were there or not? Could you fake being a Scientologist or a Sea Org member? Well, if you read the email, clearly that would be impossible for this person to have faked it. It's too well written for it not to be real.
So I've copied the email, I've pasted it into a note, I've removed the intro and the outro. We're gonna go through it paragraph by paragraph, and we're gonna talk about this. It's about Shelley Miscavige. It's about the disappearance of Shelley Miscavige. It's about why David Miscavige wanted to get rid of Shelley Miscavige, and it just offers another perspective from someone that I think, it's gonna serve as a great jumping off point for a little bit of conversation about this. So. Absolutely. Let's take a look at this, guys. Hi, Sterling. You do know me, but sometimes I go anonymous due to the topics. Your recent discussion about Shelley was spot on, but there's one aspect that I've never heard discussed, though I might have missed it. Shelley was and still is the one single person who could bring down David Miscavige if she were able to talk to literally anyone on the outside. Okay, I just want to I want to give and take some thoughts at a few different points here. So this idea that Shelley Miscavige could bring down David Miscavige if she were able to talk to literally anyone on the outside. My first thought when I read that sentence is, yes, if she wanted to bring down David Miscavige. And when he says if she were able to talk to literally anyone on the outside, I mean, one of the most recent sightings we have of Shelley Miscavige, which was by Mitch Brisker, is Shelley eating lunch at a Chipotle with 3 other Sea Org members. So you and I both know that if a Sea Org member is considered a flight risk or lower conditions or is on watch, you ain't going to have lunch at a Chipotle.
No.
True?
True. I mean, unless you have 3 Sea Org handlers with you, which, but yeah, there's some exceptions.
Why would someone who's being watched by 3 Sea Org members go have lunch at a Chipotle?
True. But we have to grant some special circumstances to Shelley Miscavige, particularly. It wouldn't be the normal routine, which of course, if you were a blow threat, there's absolutely no chance they're even letting you out the front gate. But yeah.
We can make exceptions for Shelley all day long. Yeah. One of those exceptions is that she's exceptionally high risk. I mean, we're to believe there's armed guards outside of the gate. So if you're going to hire armed guards to keep Shelley in the base, why are you taking Shelley Miscavige to Chipotle for lunch?
Right. Because really all she has to do is scream and yell and get enough attention for the cops to get there, and then she could walk away in a second.
Exactly. Yeah. That's my point. And my point isn't that those armed guards aren't there. I believe they are there. I believe they're there to keep people away because of the Shelley thing, just as much as, a side benefit is it would be much harder for Shelley Miscavige to escape if she wanted to escape.
Right.
But that's my thoughts here. And I'm only saying it because I want to get your thoughts on it as well. Like, are we to believe Shelley Miscavige wants to bring down David Miscavige?
It's a very interesting question. And what I take from that email and from my experience there, having known both of them, again, I didn't work directly for them. I just worked in and around them. I would
And
have
let's tell new viewers, you were Shelley Miscavige's brother-in-law.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And, to some degree, her nephew at the same time. So strange relationship. But to answer your question, I look at that and I go, was there a moment in time? Was there a brief time period where it went through her head, I've got to stop Dave? Now, maybe not remove him, but I've got to stop him because things have gone so off the rails. Now, take into account then, she's been missing for how long is it? I always get the time wrong.
2004 or 5, 2004.
Okay. So about
2000, let's say 2005. Let's say 2005.
So can you imagine the brainwashing and the beatdown and the repetitive counseling she's had to twist her mind about what may have happened and what she was even thinking in that time, which is what Scientology does. It's going to take your thoughts and try to turn those around on you and make it that you only had those because you yourself are an evil, bad, or you've done something wrong. So at one point, do I think that's absolutely possible? Yeah, I do think so. I just can never answer the question. I wish someone knew what was her relationship with these lawyers and these outside people, because she clearly went with Dave on a lot of his DC trips. So did she actually know them that well? Could she have done something? Could she have gone to someone and said, hey, this is getting out of hand. Is there anything we can do? He's beating people and it's not going to help us. That is the $1 million question that I would love to be a fly on the wall at some point to have known the answer to that, if that answers your question.
So let me ask you this. When you and I talk about whether Shelley wants to bring down Dave, I think we both agree that when those thoughts were probably going through her head at some point, it's bring him down from ruining Scientology, not get him dragged away by the police. She would still never want to involve the authorities. Like she might have wanted like Dave's kind of ruining Scientology, but I don't think for a second she would have thought, oh, we want the police to somehow, you know what I mean? We want the IRS involved. We want the FBI involved. We want the police involved. I don't believe for a second that would have ever gone through Shelley's mind ever, even up until present.
I agree. And I think it was more of remove his ability to continue to do the things that she saw ruining Scientology and the Sea Org more than, of course, no, because if you had to remove him publicly, well, then that's just as bad as anything else he may be doing internally. In her mind is how I would guess it was going through her mind, is that no, because if you removed him publicly, then that would look bad on everyone. But I truly believe, and this is based on talking to my mom Biddy a few times about Shelley, she was a zealot for Scientology. She really believed in L. Ron Hubbard and Scientology. And I'm willing to bet that her thought process was that what she eventually saw Dave doing was no longer Scientology. And then she got stuck between a rock and a hard place on that and how to sort that out.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Totally. Okay, so this goes on. I'm completely certain that at some point in 2005 or 2006, she turned on Dave because she finally recognized how far beyond L. Ron Hubbard and everything she grew up knowing David Miscavige had gone. She recognized how dangerous he was and how off the rails he was, and she probably told him she was going to expose him and stop him. Let's briefly check what would expose him and stop him mean in the context of Shelley Miscavige and Scientology.
You know, I have trouble with the exposing him part, because that would be something that would be an idea that's hard to understand from the point of view of someone that was inside the church or the Sea Org. So expose him, everyone inside the church. No, let me be clear. Everyone at the Int Gold base that was in his surroundings or close enough to him knew that he was doing these things, knew that he was vile and vicious, knew that he'd actually hit people, and that he did just draconian measures on everyone at that property that were just not understood. Like, why is this happening? Or why is it so bad? Or why does it have to be so bad? So exposing him, I don't know. Did she want to figure out a way to check him? I would say yes. And the email gets into how that could possibly be.
Yes.
But I think she wanted to check him. I think that's really what she wanted to do. Because maybe, who knows, maybe she thought he was a genius at everything else, but this evil streak he had of humiliating, beating, and harassing people she was trying to figure out a way around that.
I totally agree. I mean, from the anecdotes that we've heard, from the ones on the top of my head are Tom DeVocht, Mike Rinder, Marty Rathbun, but specifically, I remember hearing something like, what are we going to, like Shelley saying to someone, one of those three privately, what are we going to do about Dave? And I remember an anecdote, I can't remember which one she said it to, of where she thought Dave was actually starting to lose his mind. I think Mike and Tom both tell a story of Tom DeVocht, of walking out of the RTC office building. What is it called? Building 50 or 51?
Building 51.
Building 51. And Dave was like, where did I put the gold? Where did I put the gold? Yeah. Mike's told the story. And they're like, what the fuck are you talking? What is he talking about? Right? Where did you put the gold? Like, no, what's funny is he might have actually been thinking about something real that none of them knew about, right?
No,
okay.
Really, yeah. I mean, okay, now, so look, to clarify that, where's the gold? This is a guy, for you listeners, this is a person that knows my entire family from top to bottom. And he asked an interrogator to find out if I was a CIA plant at the age of 27. That's not a sane individual. If I was a CIA, when was I going on my CSP in the morning, flying over to Langley in a private jet to then come back so I can get more information for my position as the trees I see? Shit, I could have told him how much cottonwoods they had on the property. Game over. He's done. He's a moron. And he's paranoid. And he's paranoid, I think, partly because he was doing all this shit, and I don't think he could stop himself. I really don't think he had the ability to stop himself. The
trees I see. I keep forgetting they put you in charge of the trees, the literal trees, you guys.
Literally.
This email gets really good, you guys. Stick with us. I mean, we're slow rolling this, but these are the conversations I love having. And right. I'd love having this conversation. There's probably 10 different people who we could have an awesome conversation. In fact, the guy who wrote this email, I hope one day he'll come on and do a chat with both of us at the same time. Honestly, it would be so much fun.
That'd be awesome.
Okay. So it goes on. He had to make Shelley disappear. She truly had the power and the authority. That's important. And at the time, she would have rallied enough support to overthrow him. Now, I want to, I'm not going to pick apart every single word in this thing, but I think the operative word there is overthrow.
Yes.
That's within the Scientology world. She's not trying to get Miscavige arrested, prosecuted. She's not trying to involve the outside world. We agree on that?
Agreed.
Okay. Okay. That's why this is huge, guys. That's why Shelley Miscavige never went to the hole. In the hole, she would have had enough backing to break the system of repression and suppression of everyone who had previously held authority or knew what L. Ron Hubbard actually intended and directed. Real quick, guys. What's being said here is applicable whether you think Scientology is good, true, and legit, or whether you think it's all horseshit, garbage, hypnosis. It doesn't matter. The truth is, whether you think Scientology is garbage, which I do, I believe Scientology is garbage. Sorry, guys.
Yeah.
L. Ron Hubbard still had precise directions and policies on how things were to be run, and the truth is that what David Miscavige turned international management into is completely contrary to what L. Ron Hubbard would have wanted, whether you think Scientology's, bullshit or not. Do you and I both see eye to eye on that?
100%. And partly because as much shit as you can throw at L. Ron Howard, which is how I refer to him now. Look, the guy was a zealot. He was crazy too, but he was not in all the stories I know. And I know a lot of people. Both my parents worked for him. My godfather, Mike Rinder, worked for him. I know a lot of people that worked directly for him. And I've heard stories my entire life about that guy. And he had a vicious side, but nothing compared to David Miscavige. Not even close. So you go, it is a drastic difference between the two. And that's not to defend L. Ron Howard. That is to just say that there was a big difference in that personality and how they addressed people, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So this goes on. I was at a meeting once with David Miscavige and Russ Bellin and others. We're going to explain who Russ is in a second. David Miscavige pointed out, for no obvious reason, that Russ actually had the power and legal authority set aside by L. Ron Hubbard and the outside lawyers to remove David Miscavige. I had worked with Russ years before and knew him well. Okay, so real quick. Russ Ballin, I never knew Russ. I've never even seen the guy. I couldn't pick him out of a lineup, but I know that he was at one point in charge of CST, the Church of Spiritual Technology, one of the Scientology entities, one of the most senior entities, partially responsible for, or responsible in part for, creating these bunkers to preserve L. Ron Hubbard's materials in case of nuclear war and the end of civilization and all that shit. CST, or the Church of Spiritual Technology, also has some dual role where like it owns the trademarks and service marks, but I always get the relationship wrong. Do you know I'm going to try, please, if you know better than I do, please jump in and correct me on this, but it's like CST, there's the trademarks and the service marks and the copyrights. I can't remember which one CST owns and controls and which ones RTC owns and controls, but I think Mitch Brisker told me recently that technically CST owns them all and sort of licenses RTC the right to enforce them. I'm butchering this, I know. But technically, CST is there to be the shadow organization behind RTC, so that if RTC were to come under attack, CST could just take back the rights that it had given RTC, and CST could run away scot-free. Kind of like this, right?
I think that's a great description of it. I mean, there's probably other details intertwined into that, but if you and I thought about this last night, I was going, okay, so when the corporate sort out was done, when all the entities were put back together, and this is all conjecture on my part, but this is a logical approach to how I think it would have been done at the time. And mind you, as far as I know, David Miscavige had a large part in that. But remember, the lawyers that were helping with that sort out would have been working for the Church of Scientology and would have probably had some directions from L. Ron Hubbard at the time. And I think there would have been built-in checks and balances, even on David Miscavige. Now, the amount of people that knew about those was probably very small, but Shelley would have been one that knew about the checks and balances. So when you say taking care of or being able to create a situation where Dave is no longer in power, I'm going to bet Shelley knew that she could do that through some organization that exists, one we may not even know about, or CST itself, because if you could then take back the copyrights, you leave David Miscavige and RTC powerless, which, as we keep talking, we'll get into the later part of the thing, but I think that's a key factor. I think she knew that back door. I don't think she would be able to do it with all the people in the hole who are already beaten to a pulp and completely brainwashed into believing that everything must be Dave. I think she had the ability to possibly have outside connections. CST in itself, considered outside because it's not actually at the gold base, it's in its confidential location. I think through that, she may have had some sort of access, and maybe with one or two people that were in the hole, a Marty Rathbun or a Mike Rinder. That's how I see that particular line coming into play, or
That's
playing
right.
itself out.
Yeah. And it's interesting that he points out that it was in a meeting that Miscavige actually pointed out that Russ Bellin, as the head of CST, legally on paper in the eyes of the authorities, had the authority to get rid of Miscavige. I mean, and that is something I've heard many, many times, and I'm just glad to see this guy pointing it out, that he was actually in a meeting where Miscavige brought it up.
Right. That's fascinating in itself.
Okay, so
shows an insecurity, by the way,
yes,
that he would even mention that. Yeah.
Okay, so he goes on to say, CST was established with a very special purpose. Included in that purpose and its charter was the total power to override anything within the church, including oversight over RTC. That was inherent in owning the actual trademarks and all the original materials. Included in the original charter and board of directors of CST were actual non-Scientologist lawyers, supposedly as a safeguard against exactly what happened. In other words, David Miscavige taking over complete and full tyrannical control of all of Scientology. CST is no longer an exterior oversight body, but only another puppet organization under David Miscavige. Okay, so I'm going to put us up top here for a second. So, of course, David Miscavige systematically dismantled the original board of CST. His method of getting around everything legally was to provisionally declare people literally on a whim. Thus, any authority they had was instantly wiped out and couldn't be challenged. Now, I'm going to do my best to regurgitate something I heard Mike Rinder say.
Yep.
Which is you have this sort of circular checks and balances thing that kind of cancels each other out, where it was kind of like, yes, where the board members of CST technically could get rid of David Miscavige, but in order to be a board member of CST, you had to be in good standing with the Church of Scientology International. So David Miscavige could get rid of the CST board members by declaring them suppressive persons so that they're no longer in good standing with the Church of Scientology International.
Yep. Yeah.
So
It's
it was a way, like it was supposed to be a checks and a balance, but only in a surreptitious way. Like it was designed in a way where to the government, it would look like CST could take control away from RTC, but really Miscavige would still have control. It was just a smoke and mirrors game.
Yeah.
Now, the guy who's sending you the email is making a bit of a different point, that it wasn't supposed to be a smoke and mirrors game. It was supposed to be an actual system of checks and balances. But it seems to me that from the very beginning, this system was designed to fail.
Right.
It doesn't, I don't think Miscavige was genius in his way of getting around it. I think it was designed to not really be a system of checks and balances, but only to look like it was.
Right. And but let's just assume, and because again, this is all conjecture, but let's assume that David had that one lawyer that's completely on his side that could fit verbiage into the contracts, into the documents that were officially filed that allowed that to sneak in. Because if I remember correctly, as I've heard from Mike Rinder and other people, he was the one running that corporate sort out. Mm-hmm. So maybe there was at most, I would say 10 people involved from the actual Church of Scientology or the international base. Let's take away half those immediately just by the fact that that's what happens in that base, and go maybe 5 other people knew about it, Shelley being one. Well, you can easily, through provisional declares and whatever other method, start wiping those out systematically, and then create the thing where now it's just you and your wife. And well, she can't sue him, right? Or she can't testify against him. So that's kind of, he's not going to worry about that happening later on, and just wipes everything out. And he just did it that way until a point where he has complete power. And it is kind of interesting because in the late 90s, early 2000s, all of a sudden, CST started showing up at the base to do projects. A lot of projects. They worked on the e-meter. They worked on the basic books. They worked on the new shell designs for the new lectures for the CDs. They were doing a lot of stuff. And before then, the only time you ever saw those people ever was on a Sea Org Day. They would show up for Sea Org Day because, well, of course, they couldn't have Sea Org Day with how many people they had at their location. So they would come to the base for that once a year celebration. So they all of a sudden there, and now they're completely under Dave, running projects under him and doing all that stuff. And when I left, Russ Bellin was still in a position of power. And then I've been told after that point, he was sent to the hole like everyone but Shelley.
See, that's what's incredible is that Miscavige would acknowledge that Russ Bellin had the legal authority to remove David Miscavige. And yet Russ Bellin would allow David Miscavige to send him to the hole.
Right.
I honestly, look, I never knew Russ Bellin, but I go, what a pussy, dude. Sack up. What's your problem?
Yeah.
If anyone could be like, yeah, go F yourself. I'm not going to the hole. It's Russ Bellin.
Right.
And wasn't he the one licking the bathroom floor, or was that someone else?
I don't know. I don't know about that one. I don't know who was licking the bathroom floor. I can imagine there are probably so many. I couldn't tell you. Couldn't tell you. Yeah. He was not in the hole when I left in 2004. So,
did you ever get sent to the hole?
No. I wasn't cool enough to get to the hole. I was never.
Those trees needed someone to be in charge.
Well, and I was in marketing at that time, but it's an interesting. But still, it's an interesting question, right? So, question is, if I had been assigned to the hole at that time, would I have done it? Would I have let that happen? I can tell you almost for certainty that Biddy, if she had been assigned to the hole, would have said, go fuck yourself to Dave. But she had that particular ability to not care about Dave that much, even though she does talk about it and feels a little regret because she thinks at one point between herself and other people, they could have stopped him. just by saying, you know, hey, we're not taking that shit. You can't do that to us anymore. You can't do that to people. You need to stop it, or we're not listening to you, which is for a whole nother conversation. But no, I don't, I wasn't in the hole, but I do wonder, look, I was never going to do the RPF, the Real Rehabilitation Project Force. I knew that for a fact. Didn't matter what was happening. If you said I was doing the RPF, I was saying bye. So when someone said you're going to the RPF, I was like, thank you for the free ticket out. I'm done. So that's how I looked at life. So I don't know if I would have done good in the hole. Probably not. I probably would have followed everyone. Yeah.
So check this out. Blow Drill is Dylan. Dylan worked at CST. I've done interviews with Dylan on my several channels.
And I know Dylan Gill, by the way.
You know Dylan. When
I first went to the ranch, he was on the decks, and he used to tell me stories about stuff. And he used to talk about football with me. I think he went to USC when he was younger. And so I actually knew Dylan Gill. Funny enough.
Yeah, and Dylan worked with Shelly. And Dylan's starting his own channel. I can't remember if it's under this name Blow Drill or not, but guys, check it out. It might be. Dylan, if you're in the live chat, put up verify for me. I know you're in the live chat, but verify for me the name of your channel, and I'll put it up. He's made a few comments here that I want to highlight. Okay, so good. Dylan goes, you're made to sign a contract to go to CST and resign from the Church of Scientology International. That fits in perfectly with everything that we've been discussing.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. He also says it really was all a red herring. So meaning this corporate sort out was to protect Scientology from the authorities, not from David Miscavige, not from any one person. Remember, it was Miscavige running the damn corporate sort out. He sure as hell wasn't going to put a system in place to protect the organization from himself. Right.
Of course not. Yeah.
Okay. He also says Russ Bellin was sent to the hole along with 89% of the CST staff. Yeah. Technically speaking, RTC doesn't even have authority over CST. It just blows my mind. I know we're armchair quarterback in this thing.
Yeah, for sure.
But still.
Yeah. Yeah, and of course, I knew nothing about the relationship, the legal status between CST and the in-base RTC. Like, didn't even occur to me. But would be interesting to know is there are a few executives there, Mike Rinder being one of them, Mark Yeager being another one, maybe even Guillaume, that probably knew this stuff, or knew a little bit about it. And what kind of thing did they have to ignore not to see that writing on the wall with that? Oh my God, he's got CST in here now. I wonder if that's going to create a conflict with what their job is supposed to be in the checks and balances, right?
You know, it's interesting because if you're, let's say Mike Rinder, for example,
yeah,
and you know that this structure was put in place to protect Scientology from the authorities, and you saw David Miscavige breaking the structure down, you might, even if you, I think even if you're Mike Rinder, you're like, well, the structure wasn't put in place to protect Scientology from David Miscavige. But a thought that might go through one's head is, if you break down the structure, it's going to expose us to the authorities because we won't be able to pretend that this structure is real.
Right. Interesting. Yeah.
And actually, it didn't even occur to me until I just said that. By destroying the structure, he has exposed Scientology to the authorities.
Yes, he has. And which is why he's part of 2 or 3 lawsuits at this particular point in time.
Oh, he like 4 or 5.
Yeah. because guess what? He couldn't help himself, could he? He could not get his fingers involved in everything. He had to be everywhere and do everything at once, including beating people. So people say, again, I go back to this argument. There is an argument between ex-Scientologists and ex-Sea Org members from time to time about whether David Miscavige is smart, dumb, ambitious, or evil. I think he's dumb and ambitious and evil. Now, he may sound smart. He may even be slightly book smart, and he may not even have control over his anger issues, but he's also an idiot because he never had to go to a meeting where he had to hit someone. He could have just told 2 or 3 people, go down there, make sure it gets done. If they're not getting it done, beat them. And I'm not saying that's what you should do, but this is how stupid the guy is. I also believe that in the end, somewhere in the headspace in there, how could you not believe that at least even 2.5% of those people are going to leave and want to talk about it? Now, of course, he never expected YouTube or such a large force of people that could gather together with an unedited platform where they can talk about it. But how did you not think of that, man? I get armchair quarterbacking, hindsight's 2020. It's pretty easy to see for me right now, but you got to think that how did that guy not see how clearly obvious it was that if you did that to even 5 people, and we're talking, he must have done it to upwards in 30, 40 people, how that wasn't going to come back and bite you in the ass. How
Yeah, I mean, I
dumb.
think he's broken. I think he's broken. And I am one of these guys who think at the end of the day, he's got to be dumb. Because the truth is, most of Miscavige's problems stem from the fact that Scientology is shrinking and has been shrinking for a few decades now. Let's be honest. That is the source of Miscavige's problems. I mean, yes, the fact that there's no OT 9 and 10 is a pretty big problem. But the fact that Scientology is shrinking creates a unique problem for him, because L. Ron Hubbard said the only measure of any executive, whether they're doing a good job or even whether they're ethical, is whether the area they're responsible for is expanding. And so the only way Miscavige can continue to survive in the Scientology ecosystem is to blame Scientology's contraction on other people, but he's running out of people to blame because he's the only one left.
Right. And it does make me think maybe, just maybe, all his anxiety and his anger stems from the possibility that he truly believes L. Ron Howard's coming back, and that if L. Ron Howard comes back and checks the stats, he's out in a second. Now, I know that sounds crazy and out there, but it is a scenario that's somewhat plausible, because I truly believe Shelley thought L. Ron Hubbard was coming back, just like some of the execs, as I've been told, actually are waiting for him to come back so they can potentially report or talk to L. Ron Howard about Dave's treatment of them, which would be one of the only reasons I could understand why they take such a beating and they're still there.
Okay, so to everyone who wants to know why Sterling keeps calling L. Ron Hubbard L. Ron Howard, you have to go over to his channel and watch. Did you ever upload it as just a clip, or is it your video intro?
It's my video intro. Yeah.
Okay.
I wonder if I can pop it up now.
Well, we can only do it if you have access to StreamYard. Which do you have it on your brand thing?
I think so. I'm over here. I got brand.
If you have it, please pull up the video. No, all I see is my videos. I don't see yours. You see yours?
No. So it's just your videos. Yeah, you're right.
Guys, jump over to Sterling's channel. Watch his videos. There is an intro on one of his videos. It's a hilarious video clip from a movie of people arguing over whether it's L. Ron Hubbard or L. Ron Howard. It's one of the funniest freaking things. Okay.
I'll post it tonight.
So Dylan says, we also used to attend events. But nobody, like CST were like the ghost people. Nobody knew who the CST people were. So like the CST people could attend events. Nobody would have any idea who they were, except for the people who worked for them, who worked with them, which was like 12 people. Right. Yeah. Okay. So let's go back to this letter, because there's just a little bit more left on it. So he goes, so of course, David Miscavige systematically dismantled the original board of CST. Okay, no, we already read that one. Okay, you saw it when David Miscavige systematically dismantled the original RTC hierarchy. You saw it when he systematically dismantled CMO International and even his own RTC in the mid-2000s. That's right. He used the whole to introvert and degrade and brainwash everyone that could have challenged him, except he couldn't risk sending Shelley to the hole, as she was too powerful, no matter what he might have said about her. I just wanted to bring that viewpoint to your attention. That sentence, and just realizing that yes, he sent everyone to the hole. He sent Mike to the hole. He sent Marty to the hole. He sent, I can't remember if Claire went to the hole or not. I don't think that she did.
Yeah.
He didn't send Shelley. She had to be banished from the base instead of going to the hole. And that is an important thing to consider. Why? That's why I thought this email was so powerful. It's like, you're right. Of course, there had to be a reason he didn't want to send her there.
Right.
She was too powerful. She would have been able to actually get him removed if she so chose to.
Yeah, I agree. And normally shit rolls downhill, but it's crazy when you look at Dave's tyrannical run, from the late 90s up to, through the 2000s. It started with CMO Int and then, took out everyone in CMO Int and then took out everyone in the executive strata, which was the other management arm under CMO Int of the Scientology network. And then, the people in RTC must have seen it coming their way pretty quickly, because They were next. They were directly next. Thanks for switching me.
It's been a while. Hold on, I'm gonna put.
There we go. It's the one scenario where I think the shit started rolling uphill because there's no way that the staff in RTC didn't say, "Oh shit, it's coming our way now. It's coming." It went down and it's coming right back up to us. And eventually he did. I don't know if Claire was, but she probably was signing checks for RTC at that time, so was not expendable, right? Because that's how Dave is. I think there was, and you can ask Claire this. I think quite a bit of the RTC internal people that worked on service facility for him were not gotten rid of course, but the rest were, either sent to the hole or they weren't even allowed in building 50 at one point, I believe, which is just insane when he spends upwards of $50 million on a property and doesn't even let his own staff go in there.
He wouldn't let his own staff into the office building that he built for them.
Yeah.
Okay. Dylan says it was very clear that CST was a sure story and was 100% always run by RTC.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, that's really good to know. It was just a bullshit thing for the government. It was never intended to protect Scientology from someone in Scientology, even though that's the story Scientologists were told. Like,
right.
You remember there was a whole executive directive that L. Ron Hubbard wasn't replaced by one person. He was replaced by like committees of people. He was replaced by the International Management Executive Committee and the Watchdog Committee. It was never supposed to be one person. David Miscavige has now convinced everybody that he and he alone was supposed to take over Scientology. It's like it's the greatest con he's ever pulled off, other than the OT 9 and 10 thing.
It's so true. It's so true. He wasn't even next in line. And if it had gone by height, he would have been last in line at the entire property. So, I mean, and Janice has a great story about that. I mean, Janice's sister was the top of Scientology in the Sea Org at one point. How he took her out, is still a mystery to me.
Yeah.
Like at some point, if one person had stood up during that particular part of the coup, it would have made a big difference because this girl was the head of SEMO International. She represented L. Ron Hubbard, the most at that point, and he was actually her junior, but he had a little bit of a finger somewhere else over here. It was a perfect storm of events that led the most ambitious person to take control and eventually destroy that religion / cult, whatever. And I don't want to get into whether Scientology is good or bad. I think there's good things about it. There's tons of bad things about it. In the end, they just need to lose tax exempt status, but he definitely gets sole credit for destroying it. And there is a little bit of joy in my life knowing that because of YouTube, because of people like you, Mike Rinder, Leah Remini, that forever, no matter what, his name will be tarnished and will live on in infamy and always be tarnished.
Part of me, I wish, and Janice's sister is Terry Gamboa, and I wish Terry would come on. Hopefully, I think one day she eventually will, because we just have the most fascinating conversations about all this. I mean, Terry Gamboa was appointed as a lifetime trustee of CST.
Oh, wow. Didn't know that.
But then she blew. She went AWOL. She escaped. And now they had someone who was not in Scientology anymore, had been appointed a lifetime board member of CST. And that was a bit of a problem.
Yeah, a little bit, you say.
But, Miscavige, when we talk about Miscavige destroying Scientology, to me, that means a few things. First of all, just dismantling all of the structures that were put in place that were supposed to keep Scientology, functioning. But I would argue those systems weren't working anyway. So someone could say, who really gives a shit, right?
Right.
But he's done so many different evolutions to change the most fundamental nature of Scientology, like on a technical level, that I've asked myself whether those evolutions were truly an effort to improve Scientology from his perspective, or whether those evolutions were simply to weed out people who were more loyal to L. Ron Hubbard than they were to him. Because when you're releasing a whole massive sea change, there's going to be people who are like, what are you doing? You can't change what L. Ron Hubbard did.
Right.
So enforcing such a change weeds out people who think you don't have the authority to override L. Ron Hubbard. Now, he's done like 3 such changes, 3 such evolutions There's nobody left in Scientology who thinks L. Ron Hubbard is more important than David Miscavige. L. Ron Hubbard is now equally as important in the minds of Scientologists as L. Ron Hubbard. That would have been unthinkable in the 70s, 80s, even early 90s.
Yeah, L. Ron Hubbard is just a picture on the wall now.
Yeah.
I mean, really, that's what he is. Hey, there's a cognitive dissonance that has to go on here. And it's funny you mentioned the revolutions or the different programs he's tried to do to change this. The one that got me the most was the basic books. Because we were being told at Gold, hey, these are all wrong. We're redoing them. And I went, but wait, they were right when L. Ron Hubbard was still alive. He must have read them when they were right. He must have approved them when they were right. How could they possibly have grammatical errors? Well, everything's going to have grammatical errors. I mean, even Harry Potter has grammatical errors. But how could they possibly be wrong? And how could you be fixing them when L. Ron Hubbard, when Scientology was expanding in the 70s, thought that they were correct? I couldn't wrap my head around that piece of information. Just couldn't. I mean, it needed a cover redesign for sure, and the covers are much better now, but I couldn't wrap my head around how could you possibly change the words of L. Ron Hubbard? How is that possible? You know,
Right.
Like what?
Right. So I'll tell you, you've got the golden age of tech 1 that happened in 1996. And I'm not even mentioning evolutions that happened before my time because I don't know what they were. So, and also L. Ron Hubbard died in 86. Was there any massive evolution between 86 and 93? I don't think so. But if there was, I just don't know about it.
There's Key to Life and LOC was the big thing after L. Ron Hubbard, the next big release.
But those were great. People loved those for the most part. I mean, for the most part, the public loved those courses.
I don't doubt that. But clearing up all 60 definitions of the word it, I wanted to kill myself. So,
okay. So in 1996, L. Ron Hubbard cancels all of the auditor training that L. Ron Hubbard had put in place, and he canceled all auditor certificates that had ever been issued prior to that date.
Right.
That was a sea change. Now, look, that's where I grew up in Scientology. I consider myself a soldier for Miscavige. I did not give a damn. I did not give a damn about L. Ron Hubbard over David Miscavige. To me, David Miscavige was king. Okay. So I'm saying that from firsthand experience. Okay.
Right.
Then he does the ideal org. And technically speaking, anyone else trying to do the first golden age of tech would have been declared suppressive person instantly for squirreling and altering Scientology. Only David Miscavige had the authority to do that, and he did it.
Right.
Then you had the ideal org program, buying brand new, giant, multi-million-dollar buildings for every org in the world that Scientology can't even afford. Like that program goes against everything L. Ron Hubbard said should be done to expand organizations. But Miscavige got everyone to swallow it hook, line, and sinker.
Right.
Okay. Then you had the second golden age of tech where he introduced now quickie grades and endless objectives processes, all stuff that L. Ron Hubbard would be rolling in his grave. And guys, keep in mind, I don't give a shit about Scientology. I'm not an independent Scientologist. I think it's all horseshit at this point. L. Ron Hubbard would still be rolling in his grave.
100%.
That doesn't even include what you mentioned about the basic books.
Yeah, no. And to add to the sham, not only did he create these brand new ideal sparkling orgs, which L. Ron Hubbard never said to buy new buildings or do that, but to actually just deliver Scientology, I believe he got the public to pay for them.
Yes.
Am I wrong about that?
No, you're totally right. Oh, and by the way, the strategy is 20 years old now, and it's not even halfway done.
No, and they're empty. They are empty.
Yes.
Empty organizations. I've driven by the Ventura one several times, and there's never more than 3 cars in the parking lot.
Yes.
On a weekend.
I get emails from people all over the world, and I've had conversations with people all over the world telling me the ideal org buildings are ghost towns. No one's in them.
Right.
So I truly wonder whether Miscavige is honestly in his mind trying to reverse the downward trend of Scientology, or if he's just trying to weed out people who still might think he's the problem. I can't make an argument. The only argument I can make is that he's trying to get rid of people who think he's the problem. I don't understand it.
Right. But when you say that, I wonder how many people are left. I wonder if he's accomplished a majority of that goal already with getting rid of your Mike Rinders, your Tom DeVox, Biddy Miscavige. A lot of people that would at least have some sort of questioning about his activities. And I think about who is still there, who I still know. Like Jenny Linson, I think is devoted to him for the rest of her life. Mark Yeager, which is strange. Mark Yeager is because I mean, I know from stories personally, Mark Yeager doesn't even like Dave. So I find that one strange in itself. Like, why do you even keep supporting? But he was also, severe. I would argue he was the first whole practitioner. He was the inaugural test run for that whole process, because I don't know if you've talked about it, but he was the one that was sent out to the swamp area of the property and built his own cabin out of the bamboo shoots that were out there, and just basically removed bamboo and mud from a swamp for over a year because he dared question Miscavige.
It's crazy.
Right, for a year, and he was one of the original messengers. So
this is one of the problems right now, as far as people currently leaving Scientology. Every single week, the Aftermath Foundation is helping someone who's leaving Scientology. But here's the problem, kind of more big picture, philosophically speaking. So many aspects of Scientology have been fundamentally changed under Miscavige that what you're left with are people who just didn't have that much of a problem with it, right?
Okay.
It's okay. Let me be a little more articulate about this.
Yeah.
Today, there's never been more information publicly available about the abuses in Scientology. It's never been easier to leave Scientology. There's never been more help available to help people leave Scientology. The Aftermath Foundation and other things, right?
Right.
Therefore, the people who are left after all these years, after all these changes, after all these alterations of L. Ron Hubbard policy, and after all the public humiliations of going clear and Scientology in the aftermath and all the books that have been written, you're left with the people who are more hardcore and radicalized and think David Miscavige is great and can do whatever he wants.
Yeah.
And that is what's going to allow Scientology to exist for longer than what people might think is possible. Because if these people were going to just wake up, they would have done so a few years ago. Right.
I have to say that, the only thing in history which I find akin to that would be Hitler's youth. And that may offend some people. But again, that's Scientology uses that excuse when they talk about disconnection, and that's a story I'll tell sometime. But the zealotry so high level, and like you say, L. Ron Hubbard's kind of a thing of the past, except for this mythical creature, sort of, and it's Dave's army, essentially, right? It's Dave's army, and it is, no matter what he says, it must be right. And don't forget, Dave does not show his face to everybody. He only shows his face to the people he knows he can get away with hurting the most, in a location where people can't get to, where he can control the narrative from that location. So a majority of the Scientologists would never believe that someone like Dave Miscavige could possibly hit somebody, but that someone said he did, it must just be a bald-faced lie. And of course, we know he's done it. I've seen him do it.
Well,
so have many others.
And I just want to also be fair and accurate from my perspective. When I was in, I wouldn't have given a damn if Dave Miscavige was beating people up.
Right.
I would not have cared in the least.
Right.
So it's funny to me to hear some Scientologists be like, oh, no, he couldn't possibly do that. And I'm like, why? From the perspective of a true believing Scientologist, I go, why the hell would it be a big deal if he did? Like, we're not supposed to be a bunch of pussies over here, you guys.
Yeah, exactly. And I like that you say that, Aaron. And here's why. I think it's important to understand that every person, when they tell their story on SPTV, you have a unique perspective and observation you have. Now, and I want to articulate this well too. So it's one thing if someone says, okay, I was there when Dave hit Mike Rinder, and another person goes, Dave never hit Mike Rinder. Now that's a bald-faced lie that should be challenged, because no, that definitely happened. Now, if you say, for instance, you enjoyed a certain part of, and let's make this really simple. You liked LRH's fiction, even though someone commented in my video the other day that it's all fiction anyways. But for the purpose of this, you liked LRH's fiction. Now,
I did.
Yeah, and so did I. So someone can get on there and go, oh, well, this is a guy that child traffics, that has an organization that destroys families and all this stuff. How could you possibly like his fiction? What's wrong with you? But it's not about that. It's about where you were and your type of personality when you were there. You wrote KRs. I didn't. You were tech trained. I wasn't. But I have many different experiences. Some things that you may say were horrible, I may say wasn't that bad. And that is the one thing I do like about this network, is the ability to share those stories in an open forum where you must understand that everyone experienced things slightly different. But it's another reason why I do like your channel, and I do like coming on your channel, because I feel like there is an open forum for that, and discussing things can be very intellectual, and you can take it from your point of view without any sort of anxiety about someone countering what your memory is of a particular subject. So that I just want to say that. Yeah.
Totally. And people having different experiences doesn't invalidate these others' experiences. People have, by definition, different experiences.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You know, I want to make a point that our average viewer may not even be aware.
Yeah.
It might seem natural that when L. Ron Hubbard died, someone else would have to replace him as the face or the guy of Scientology. I want to point out how that's actually not true. L. Ron Hubbard had been disappeared from view. Nobody had seen or heard from L. Ron Hubbard. Was it 6 years or 8 years he was in seclusion? I think it was 6 years, right?
I think it was 6 years. Yeah, I think it was the beginning of the 80s, maybe 79. So maybe
I'm going to say
6 years.
6 years is what I've always heard. Nobody had seen or heard from L. Ron Hubbard in 6 years.
Public Scientologists.
Yeah. Well, Sea Org members, except for the 6 people, even Sea Org members had not seen L. Ron Hubbard for 6 years.
Yep.
And by the time L. Ron Hubbard died, after being in seclusion for 6 years, and David Miscavige showed up to the event with Pat Broker to announce his death, no one had any idea who the hell David Miscavige and Pat Broker were. There were echelons of management in place. No one knew who David Miscavige was. The public had never set eyes on this little midget. Okay, I know you can't say midget, so I apologize.
Yeah.
No one had ever set eyes on this guy, even though up until that point, he was in some ways one of the top dogs in Scientology. It simply was never supposed to be that some personality was going to become the new driving force of Scientology. The only reason Miscavige has even become that is because he's eliminated anyone else who he thought could threaten his desire to become that.
Right.
He was I just wanted to address the fact that it's not like there's some natural, it's not like the Pope where, well, one Pope dies, you're going to get another Pope. There was never supposed to be a guy who was the new guy. Anyhow, I'm repeating myself.
And that's an interesting conversation to have too. How did he do it from that point on? Well, it was the events, right? It was the repetition of seeing this guy get up on stage and tell you all the good news over and over again, 4 times a year. He was a master of ceremonies. He greeted everyone in the beginning to a point where his face became the familiar face or the face of Scientology. That is how he did it. And if I believe what I've been told from some people, I think the events weren't even supposed to happen. I believe that L. Ron Hubbard didn't want events happening like 4 or 5 times a year. I think Mark's talked about that before, but he goes off, and that might be the first time he went off and did something directly against what L. Ron Hubbard said, but he had to do that in order to get the public face, right?
Yeah.
That's how we did it. I mean, you wouldn't know who he was unless he was at an event.
Yeah. I saw a question here from Andy, and I think he's talking about when I said I wouldn't care if David Miscavige was beating people up. What makes you care now, Aaron? I got to be honest with you. I do not care. That is the least objectionable part of Scientology. If I make reference to him beating people up, it's because the truth is public Scientologists do actually care. Like, I'm bringing it up because I know other people care. In the context of the Sea Org, people getting physical with each other is the least objectionable thing about that experience, in my opinion. I'm not like, oh no, David Miscavige hit somebody. it's not on my list of things I care about. It's not good, but you'll know. But I do hundreds of videos on my channel. I don't think you see me harping on the fact that that's the least objectionable part of all of this, in my opinion. I'm just going to keep repeating myself, but I don't know.
No, I get that. I get it. It's sorry. My mind wandered there for a second because as you were saying that, I was thinking about this fact that there's only one person that ever physically hit me when I was in the Sea Org. And believe it or not, Dave was not one of them. He yelled at me, but he never hit me. I was hit by Russ Bellin.
You were?
Yeah. So I'm wondering now, we're listening to this. Arguably, did I get hit by someone even more senior than Dave? Because it was Russ Bellin who possibly had the power to oust Dave. So I've been hit by the most senior person in Scientology before I left. The thought did cross my mind.
How did Russ Bellin end up hitting you?
Okay. So when Russ was doing all the projects at Golden Era Productions with the basic books, the basic lectures, and redesigning, he was doing a lot of the manufacturing research. I was working in the marketing unit on the book covers with Dan Kuhn and Rickard Rodin. And so we would submit copy for the back of the books. And every time Dan Kuhn would change the copy for the back of the books, we would have to reprint out the covers on our printers, bind them to the books, and send them to wherever Dave was located. We did this so many times. It was torture anyways, but we had a very, very expensive $20,000 Epson printer that was fine-tuned by a professional. So color never changed on this thing because of course the color always, even though the cover design and color was already approved, every time we had to resubmit the copy, the new submission had to obviously still match the one from before, which was stupid when you think about the fact that we couldn't just submit the copy separately. But that's Dave's management skills right there. So it gets sent up to Dave. It comes back with a, hey, and he's in the United Kingdom. It comes back with a, hey, what is up? The color on the submission is completely wrong. And as it goes on any day at Golden Era Productions or the Int Base, the executives come storming up to marketing. They call me, they call Henning Bendorf, they call Rickard Rodin over because I was the one that handled the printing of those covers. And they're like, okay, guys, what's wrong? What did you guys change? What's different? And in most cases in a meeting like that, you're supposed to give a pretty quick answer. So you don't have a whole lot of time to think about the answer. But I was thinking about it pretty quickly that day. And by that, I mean, is that I didn't think how my answer might affect the person asking it, but I was just trying to give an honest answer. I knew that the printer had been calibrated just that last week. So there was no possible way it was any different than what it was. Same paper, same printer. So I looked up above me when we had fluorescent lights up there and I was like, I wonder, we're looking at it every time here. We know it matches in this room. We look at it. Dave, up to this point, had mostly looked at it in his room up in RTC. So I went, well, but he's in the UK. I wonder if the lights there are different because obviously the lighting in a room drastically affects the color you see on a printed page. Okay. So
That's smart. That's pretty smart.
Right. I wasn't a dummy. So I said, hey, maybe Dave's looking. No, I didn't say Dave. Maybe where he's looking at it is a different set of lights and it's changing the color. Instantly, Russ Bellin reaches across the table, open-handed, and just smacks me right across the face.
Because he had to go back to Dave with a real answer, not a bullshit your lights. Well, no, but the lights would have been a great answer.
Right. But you couldn't say that back to him because it was now I made Dave's question stupid by pointing out what I pointed out. And Russ Bellin was the one that was going to have to go back to him and say, sir, that was a stupid question. So I stopped at that moment and I just looked at Russ Bellin and I was just like, and I just stared at him and gave him the best evil eye I could because I couldn't really reach back out at him. Mind you, I was 120 pounds. Even if I had swung at him, I think, and slapped him, his hair wouldn't even have moved at that time. I was skinny. And I just stared at him and then he didn't say anything to me and then completely picked up the conversation and kept going. Okay, guys, well, we need to find out what it is, et cetera, et cetera. It eventually came down later on, I believe that, I think the color, I think I was looking at it under these different lights. And I remember being told that later on by Henning Bendorf. And Henning Bendorf, just so everyone knows, was the art director at Gold. So he had his hands involved in all the cover designs, the films, and the actually he's the one who started doing the original designs and the ideal orgs. But I remember it coming back later and saying, okay, yeah, everything's okay. You know, the lights he was looking at were different. And I just sat there with this face like, really? Okay. That slap.
He told you it was the light. It was the lights.
Yeah.
No.
And I was right, but I got slapped for it. Yeah. It was so simple to figure that out. Like, why was there a question even being asked? Wow. Besides the absurdity that we had to submit new covers every time Dan Kuhn changed 4 words on the back of the cover. It's the busy work that we've talked about. A day in the life of a Sea Org member. And I know some people have done that, and I would love to do that sometime, because I would love to know what your day in the life was compared to what maybe someone at Gold was. There'd be fun comparisons.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
That would be awesome.
And really like, and I'm going to do it. I'm going to do this soon. I can't wait to do this actually. And it's going to take a little bit of prep work for me, but I want to, like I did the SP channels video of all the SP channels I like the most and why. I want to do the books I like the most and why, because every person's book, from Jenna's to Leah's to even Ron Miscavige Senior's book, all has these little parts that triggered, for lack of a better word, different reactions from me. And Ron Miscavige Senior's book has the best description of the minutia control that Dave had on everything that created so much extra work for everybody all the time. That alone proves the guy's an idiot and the worst manager of all time. Yeah. He could destroy a Chick-fil-A if he was in there for 24 hours. That's how bad he was at managing.
What
Seriously.
does that mean? Oh, did Chick-fil-A's operate like clockwork?
Yeah.
Like a fine-tuned machine?
Oh yeah, he would destroy it. He'd probably fire 3 people in the first 5 seconds for not having the right hue of golden chicken in the fryer at the time. No, absolutely he could. He absolute terrible manager, because as we said before, when you have
he's a horrible manager.
Yeah, when you have a group of people as dedicated as Sea Org members were or are, that were that smart, and you couldn't manage to get a consistent flow of great products and even to some degree expand Scientology, you're an idiot. Yeah. That's my word. No, Scientology obviously would cap out no matter what, because it doesn't really work in the long run. But still, I mean, again, you got rid of the Jeff Hawkins, you got rid of Foster Tompkins, who I believe is now cutting wood. That's my dad, cutting wood down in the Pack Mill. But that guy is a genius. He could have him and you just left him and Jeff Hawkins, and I'm sure Mike Rinder and other people would agree, to the marketing, you'd have a much better scenario today than ever.
I mean, in the real by real world standards, the skill of a manager is to attract and foster and create talent. And David Miscavige just does the exact opposite of that.
100%. Yep.
He sacks everybody. He gets rid of everybody. Everyone's evil. Everyone's bad. Everyone's suppressive. And it's like, it's amazing he's been able to trick Scientologists into thinking that he is the driving force behind the fastest growing religion on earth. I mean, it couldn't be more opposite to the truth.
I know. And the cognitive dissonance for people still in Scientology to still believe it's the fastest growing religion, or that it's even expanding.
Right.
I don't understand how you can have that thought still.
I mean, I just love talking about this, because it's like, guys, the difference between literally contracting to being the fastest growing religion on earth. We're not shitting you guys. This is what Scientologists believe. Miscavige has convinced them that Scientology is the fastest growing religion on earth, when every Scientologist in the world can see that their local organization is freaking empty. And you guys want to talk, like, if you ever need an example of what does it mean to be in a cult? What does it mean to be in a high control group? Yeah. What does it mean to have your behavior and your information and your thought and your emotions controlled? If you haven't been in that, it's hard to believe that people can really be that deluded.
Yeah.
Especially when Scientology, the for the most part, I probably shouldn't generalize too much, but I want to say, has smart people in it. But this is what it means to be in a cult. Mm-hmm. There's rocket scientists in Scientology.
Oh yeah.
It's fucking crazy, man.
And extremely talented people in Scientology.
And they're
extremely
wasted.
talented.
Their talents are being wasted. Their time is being wasted. Their money's being wasted.
So wasted. And that even brings up I still think, and this may sound absurd, I still think there are people in the Sea Org, and I think my father Foster is one of them, that aren't there for Dave. They're there for when L. Ron Hubbard comes back because they're not really loyal to Dave. I think there's a handful of people that are still waiting on Hubbard coming back because really, Dave's not a very likable person. If you're around him that much, your brain can only handle so much abuse to where you realize, okay, well, we're just going to block it out because L. Ron Hubbard's coming back. He must be coming back at some point. Yeah. And I believe my father is in that bucket. I really, really do. Because I've never heard my dad say anything positive about Dave Miscavige. I don't think he likes him. Yeah.
Yeah. And Foster Tompkins, if you're out there, we hope you'll leave the Sea Org.
Please
enjoy your life for whatever is left of it. Your dad can't be that old. How old is he?
I'm terrible with this. I think he's maybe early 70s, maybe 71, 72.
Okay.
I should know this.
He's got a lot of years left.
Yes,
he does. A lot of years left.
Yes,
all right, let's go through some of these super chats here. Sarah Woodrow. I'm supportive of what you do. However, I think there is a lot more under the surface than what we all know. I don't know what that means. From the UK here. Under the surface of what?
Well, it might be in reference to what we're talking about, the subject we're talking about, the corporate sort out, CST, RTC. Oh. I think she's saying there may be some other stuff there that we don't even know about, even in our intellectual conjecture here. Yeah.
For sure. Absolutely. Okay. I like this one. LOPNC1. I'd like to hear more about Stephen Fishman. Like, how did he come to fake being a Scientologist? I don't want to spend, I didn't read the whole comment before what I said. Yeah. He was a fake Scientologist. How did he come to fake being a Scientologist? I have no idea.
Because he's got nothing better to do in life. Sorry.
Yeah. He was a con man in general. So whatever. Yeah. Prince Muskie, do you think David Miscavige needs Hulk? Okay.
So there's no censoring of these. There's no
LOPNC. I'm hoping Miscavige punches Hulk Hogan. All right.
Yeah, but just so you know, if there was ever a fight, Miscavige would be called for hitting him under the belt because I don't think Miscavige can reach a whole lot higher than his belt. So
that's right. Yeah. Jorge Avila. Miscavige started a rumor about me. He said I was on steroids. He was on steroids.
Do you know who that is?
So I don't think I ever knew Jorge, but I'm familiar. I don't actually know who Jorge is, but I know he was someone from the in-base.
Yeah, he was a security guard at the in-base. Yeah.
That's actually he was taking testosterone. I tend to think he's not anymore if you've seen photos of him. Recent photos of him. Okay, Ryan Howe. Do Scientologists actually believe in reincarnation like what was stated in South Park and have a belief that Hubbard will return to lead them? Go ahead, take this one.
Yeah. So yes, absolutely. Reincarnation is a staple of the Scientology religion. And I believe that most Scientologists and definitely most Sea Org members believe that L. Ron Howard is coming back, despite the fact he is, I believe, 10 to 15 years late on that promise.
But Sterling, when you were at the Int-Base, did you believe L. Ron Hubbard was going to come back?
100%.
That is amazing to me.
Yeah, I was watching his house be built. Why else would you spend $20 million rebuilding his house and staffing it with people to clean it every day if he wasn't coming back? So I did believe he was coming back.
Did you know when you were up there, I don't know how you could have known, but I'm asking you, that the public and the staff were not told he was coming back and did not expect him to come back?
Oh, no, I thought that was common knowledge.
So
really?
There was this whole thing. I forget which L. Ron Hubbard, which Ron's journal it was, whether it was From Clear to Eternity or something else, where he says, I will see you up the line at Target 2.
Yes.
Well, that was always interpreted by me and every other public and staff member I've spoken to about this. The only exception being the Sea Org members who were at the Int-Base, that he wasn't coming back. He was going to go get the ball rolling on Target 2. We were going to finish clearing Earth, clearing the planet, and then we would, I guess, have a mass reincarnate. Instead of picking up a new body on Earth, we'd jump over to Target 2 and pick up bodies on Target 2. Growing up in Scientology, that is 100% what I always believed.
And it's funny. I get what you're saying about that. So I did have both those datums. I knew that he talked about returning. I knew that that was a datum that specifically you would know at Golden Air Productions or the Int Base. I also knew about Target 2, and I knew they were building the house. But being in a cult, I never put those three things together. They never occurred to be contrarian in any way. So it never occurred to me, believe it or not, it just never occurred to me that was a thing. I just maybe hoped he was coming back because it would be fun to meet him, maybe. But no, I think that was as far as my belief went with that.
I love that that's your answer, because I've asked Mike Rinder about this too, and he sort of goes, well, I never really thought about it.
Oh no, I definitely thought about it, and I thought about it like my twin brother. We were a little bit. And sorry, I apologize, everyone. We've got no sighting photos today. But like for my twin brother, Justin, he really was enticed by the promise of these OT abilities that could come from Scientology, moving things with your mind, as closely related to as a Jedi sort of power as you could think. And so was I a little bit. But I just realized that I wasn't going to get there through sec checking. So I kind of lost interest at one point. But Justin was interested in that particular part of it. Everyone's got a different reality and view of what they were seeing when they were there and how things went. So to answer that question.
Yeah.
And
guys, I want to put this out there as a general request. If you were never at the international base and you were just a former public or a former Sea Org member or a former public, former staff member, or a former Sea Org member, but a Sea Org member who was never at the international base, and you did think L. Ron Hubbard was returning, I want to hear why. Please contact me, growingupinscientology@gmail.com, because I've never found one yet who did. Okay, Diana B. I agree, Aaron. David Miscavige hitting is low on the list of issues. Yeah, it's like he wasn't the only people who hit people. And it's funny. I think most Scientologists would probably agree that at the end of the day, they don't really care about that. But I know that's not true for everyone. I have heard from people who that was a major thing for them. So I can't speak for everybody, but
and imagine this. So imagine if you're, let's just take me for example. So I grew up in Scientology my entire life. I did have a period while I was in LA, went up to the Int Ranch and then Gold. Violence wasn't a common thing for me, except for when I was a kid in LA, when we had a few gang issues on the street I lived on. Other than that, there wasn't a lot of violence at the Int Ranch. There wasn't a lot of violence when I first got to Gold. So when you all of a sudden see violence like that in that scenario, when you grew up, it's quite a shocking thing for sure. You don't even know how to assimilate that information when you've grown up in a bubble like that.
It's interesting. Yeah. By the time I got to, the Sea organization in Los Angeles in 2002, from 2002 to 2004, I mean, I saw John Lundeen try to physically strike people with a closed fist 4, 5, 6 times. Wow. He would push women. He pushed Andrea Butterworth Lewis. She was the chief officer of ASHO at the time, pushed her straight up into a filing cabinet. I saw him try to strike the flag rep. He tried to strike me a couple times. So that the violence from Miscavige did trickle down.
Yeah.
But it also, and I want to be clear, when violence like that would happen, it was kind of a big deal. It was kind of a big deal, but not like a really big deal.
Right. It
wasn't considered just okay, but it wasn't considered bad enough that somebody was going to be removed from their post for it.
Yeah, I don't think anyone ever was removed for post for it.
Hell no.
Because most of the time they were doing it at Dave's orders or because Dave had already done it.
Yes.
So it opened the door on that particular person.
Exactly. Yeah. Cranky says, doesn't someone have to be charismatic for it to be a cult? Miscavige doesn't fit the bill. Miscavige, when it comes to the public Scientologists, is extremely charismatic.
Yes, I'd agree.
He knows how to turn it on.
Public speaker. He's a decent public speaker too. Not the best, but decent.
I must have gotten out of sequence. Okay, let's do this one. Sandy, the big question still in my brain that I can't make sense of. How in this day and age is Scientology able to hold people like this? How can police ignore it? Please explain. I want to understand. When you say hold people, Sea Org members who want to escape can escape pretty easily, in my opinion. What's your opinion on that?
They can, but I want to refer back to a wonderful book by Larry Wright, where he calls Scientology the prison of belief. Mm-hmm. And to give you an example, there are instances where you've people have been locked in an auditing room during an interrogation and can't get out. But in 99% of the cases, you could just get up and walk out that door. But what's outside that door, if you don't answer the question, is almost worse than staying inside. And that, in my opinion, is a prison of belief. So that is how you can justify or do whatever you want. But that I think that is, yeah, it's a prison of belief. You're stuck there because what's outside may be worse and you don't know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Celix the Fat, knowing Shelley, do you think it's possible that she is on the mentality of Ron will come back and fix it?
You know, I definitely think that. I absolutely do. And I think my mom, Biddy, who knew Shelley pretty well, is going to do an interview at some point, with Aaron and Claire separately. And she's going to talk about that. And she has a very interesting take on Shelley, which I don't think anyone's talked about up to this point. So if you want to know more about that, I don't want to speak out of place. They'll talk about that.
I mean, I hope you talk about that with her as well. This conversations like that are the kind of conversations that I hope they don't only happen once or only on a couple channels. You know, I think your mom's perspective on that is, I don't know what her perspective is, but she worked so closely with Dave and Shelley. Whatever her perspective is, everyone needs to hear it.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
Sense of style. How could David Miscavige get away with beating anyone? Isn't that a criminal offense? Couldn't someone just call the police and press charges? Go ahead, take this one.
Well, it seems like this question has been answered so many times, but again, it's a prison of belief. So let's assume Dave, let's not assume Dave beat people. That person first, if it was at Golden Era Productions, didn't have access to a phone to even call and would never even consider. That's nothing that even crosses your mind. Because also take into account, I'm going to assume that most people there have never even called the police. I had never called the police once in my life for a single thing until I had left. And about 10 years after I left, when I called the police because my little brother didn't show up on a flight that he was supposed to when he was blowing the Sea Org. So it doesn't even cross your mind. Your first thought is, what did I do wrong to deserve that? Now, after a number of beatings, some people tend to get to, like your Mark Headleys, tend to go, well, what the fuck? Why am I taking it from this goddamn guy? I'm just going to stand up and give it back at some point. But everyone's different in that. You just calling the police, not an option, not really ever a thought. And to be honest with you, I didn't know it was illegal to hit someone either. Never even occurred to me that hitting someone was illegal. I hit one kid in school for throwing my Kenny Loggins CD out the window. Police weren't called for that, so it never occurred to me. A
Sea Org member would literally never call a police, no matter what. Like, just hypothetically speaking, if a Sea Org member pulled out a gun and shot another Sea Org member, none of those Sea Org members would call the police. They would call the Office of Special Affairs, and the office, like, calling the police just isn't even on the radar. It's just not even a thing. David Miscavige has joined the chat. He wants us to let him know he's really into Tommy Cruise these days. He's my little power bottom. I'm going to take your word for that. Okay. Andy Fabulous. So how do CSTSPs even get sent to Twin Peaks? Aren't they excommunicated from the church? Go ahead. Take this one.
Wow. I don't know how to answer that. How do CSTSPs get sent to Twin Peaks?
Well, the answer is they're just unofficial secret declares. They're not like real declares.
Right. Yeah.
Like when David Miscavige declares Guillaume Leserve, he doesn't kick him out of the Sea Org. He's only doing it to crush him mentally. So, like, for example, if he were to declare Shelley an SP, he's still going to send her to CST. He doesn't give a shit.
Well, so you know what? I misunderstood that question because it says CST. I thought it was applying only to staff at CST.
So I think he meant like if he's going to. I hope we're understanding the question correctly, Andy. I think it's like if he was going to give Russ Bellin a provisional declare.
Got it.
Oh. I think it's because I said Miscavige could, in order to be on the board of CST, you have to be in good standing with CSI. So Miscavige could just declare one of them and they can't be on the board anymore. But Andy, the answer is they're not real declares. They're just, Miscavige does whatever the hell he wants.
Yeah, he's pretty much declared everyone at least once in the executive structure of international management. So,
yeah. Oh, interesting question from Josh Cox. Are there any former Scientologist stories you have a hard time believing?
That's a loaded question. No, not really. If they actually had proven to be actual ex-Scientologists and ex-Sea Org members, I am no longer surprised. And that being said, Aaron, you do a lot of coverage on the sexual crimes of Scientology and ex-Sea Org members. That, to me, being where I was at the location, I had never even heard of that. Not once, not a single thing. Didn't even occur to me. So I guess I'm a little surprised to hear that now. But then when the stories are told and the circumstances connected to them are spoken about in detail, I go, oh, well, that absolutely sounds like what would have happened or how that would have gone down. So no, I'm not surprised by that. But some things I definitely learned after I left that really had no clue were happening.
Yeah. So the only thing that comes to mind is there are people who actually lie about being former Scientologists. Like, I forget her name, this crazy girl that who's that guy in Ireland who platformed this crazy girl who said she was like David Miscavige's sex slave at Int and had like 4 of his kids. Like, she's just a liar. She's never been in Scientology, much less in the Sea Org, much less at the Int base. Like, she's just a liar.
Yeah.
And I can't think of a single former Scientologist story that was like, that didn't happen. People have different experiences. People have different recollections of perhaps a similar experience. And I'm just honestly just speaking theoretically. I can't even think of anything specific that I'm referring to. Oh, but like your experience at the Ant Ranch is different from other people's experience at the Ant Ranch, just for example.
Yes. Yeah.
But it doesn't mean either of you are lying.
No, not at all. No. Right. And you have to include the factors around it. Age makes a difference. Independence at the time makes a difference. Like if you're away from your parents, and what happened right before that. So when I went to the Inn Ranch, I came from LA, which sucked. It was horrible. There was nothing there for me. I did not like it. And I went to this ranch that had a giant property where I learned how to ride a motorcycle for the first time at the ranch. I can't talk negatively about learning how to ride a motorcycle. I still ride one today. I love doing it, but that never negates other people's stories, because I understand, especially when you were younger and you didn't have your parents around you, your experience at the ranch was horrible. If you got spanked at the ranch, that's horrible. I got spanked in LA by a male adult. Didn't like it. No one touched me at the Int Ranch. I enjoyed my very short stint there for 2 years. Then I went to Golden Air Productions in base. That was horrible. So everyone's, you're not going to find someone say that anytime at the in base are going to say that it was majorly pleasant there. Of course, you're just not going to find that. Yeah.
Guys, if you're one of the over 6,000 people watching live right now, do us a favor and hit that like button. It really does help, guys. It's fast. It's free. It's easy. And while you're down there, hit that subscribe button. All right.
Yeah. Okay. Someone asked about my channel. So if you want to throw that up real quickly again, I know you're
here. I will. I'll throw it up. We got, shit.
That's it.
How did the screen share not work? Oh, I must have undid it. Hold on. Here we go. Here is Sterling's channel. Sterling Tompkins, leaving Scientology, loving life. All right, but we're not done, you guys. What am I doing? Good Lord. Okay. Would you rather fight one giant David Miscavige or 100 tiny Julian Schwartzes?
Well, first, I'm a lover, not a fighter. But you know, I have a hockey stick in my closet, so fighting 100 tiny Julian Schwartz might sound fun to me, but I also have never met Julian Schwartz that I know of. His picture did seem somewhat familiar, but I don't think I've ever met him.
He's tall, but he's soft.
Okay.
Yeah.
The bigger they are, the harder they fall.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay, let me see. Dissident agnostic. Maybe L. Ron Hubbard would be taken more seriously if he received a revelation in a cave with no witnesses.
Not going there.
I feel like that's shots fired against someone. I'm not sure who.
Yeah.
Okay. Telperion. Being a great manager, hire motivated people, trust them, set high standards for everything, lead by example, get out of the way and let them be the heroes. That's it.
Yeah. Amen. Absolutely.
And that's the other thing. Miscavige wants to blame everybody for the failures and take credit for the successes when a real leader does the exact opposite.
And it's actually unbelievable, just to that point. If the smallest error was made that maybe cost you an hour of production time, Scientology policy will have you investigate that hour lost for 24 hours to find out what the problem was, instead of just getting back, fixing it and getting back to work. which is one of the insanities inside that. So instead of just going, that was an error, let's make sure we don't do it again, continue, they spend so many man hours trying to figure out why you made the error instead of just going, hey, let's fix that and move on. It's absurd how much time they spend trying to make sure you can point the finger at one particular person.
It's amazing how much inefficiency will be baked into an organization that has a personnel cost of near zero.
Right.
Because everyone's working for free. There's no even incentive to be efficient. You know, it's silly. Okay, JK in Toronto. How does David Miscavige make smart people like Nancy Cartwright? I'm not sure she's very smart. Or the Tom Cruises. I'm not sure he's very smart either. Still believe that they need to donate. LOL. Or are they smart? Okay, fine. So you know, other than everything that we've already said, I don't know how else to explain it. When you're in a cult, a high control group, man, you can make these people believe anything.
Yeah,
you really can.
And I have a comment on this. I have a comment on that last one real quick.
Oh, go for it. Go for it.
So Tom Cruise being Dave Miscavige's best friend. My mom, Biddy, has met Tom Cruise several times, and she has emphatically said to several family members, Tom Cruise is a dum-dum. He is not that smart. He is not that smart at all. He is like Dave, ambitious. Now, think about Tom Cruise. How can you be friends with a sociopath like Dave Miscavige for this long and not recognize who he really, really is? So to that, I would argue, just because you're a movie star, just because you're famous and you have millions of dollars does not make you smart. I have it from someone that's met him that he's really not that intelligent. And I kind of believe that. That's my opinion, though.
Yeah, it's amazing how far pure ambition can get you in life.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, read a book. Thank you very much. Oh, read a book. I get it. Okay, Nisha Steele, Power to the Aftermath Foundation. Thank you. Thank you, Nisha. Rachel says, has anyone ever collected the stories and asked a lawyer about a case? I think it's a class action case. The emotional and physical damage breaks my heart. I'm going to give a simple answer to this. No lawyer. The religious protection that Scientology enjoys due to its IRS tax exempt status tends to shield it from what I'm going to call relatively minor things, such as physical and emotional abuse. No offense intended by calling those relatively minor things. What I mean when I say those are relatively minor things, the federal government has a lot more juicy things they care about when it comes to Scientology than physical and emotional abuse. You're talking about RICO shit. You're talking about identity theft, wire fraud, credit card fraud. I don't say laundering because Scientology's money is already clean. You don't have to launder clean money. But look, we don't need there's already 5 lawsuits and a grand jury investigation going against Scientology right now. And there's a lot more to come, you guys. Scientology's got a lot to worry about. That's my answer.
Shit is catching up to him, and that's awesome.
Dude, this was a lot of fun.
Oh, super fun, man.
This was great. We just burned 90 minutes. Wow.
No, that was I think one of the best conversations we've had, and I enjoyed it. And I thank you to the anonymous source that sent that. That was great food for thought. Thank you.
So guys, one last reminder, go over and check out Sterling Tompkins' channel on YouTube, Sterling Tompkins. Oh, look, you broke 4,000 subs. You're at 4.2. Very nice.
I know, right? I'm getting there.
And hey, I hope you got some of your other friends from the Int Ranch, from LA, from Golden Era Productions. I hope they come on your channel soon. And hey, if you think it would be a lot of fun, we can do a group chat.
Absolutely. I'm working on it.
All right, everyone. Thank you for hanging out with us on this Sunday. Thank you, as always, to everyone who watches until the very, very end. And we'll talk to you soon.
Okay, if you want to see my rock and roll songs, click right on this guitar. And if you want to see a different one of my videos, then you could click right inside here. If you have subscribed or not, subscribe right here. Bye.